Hi everybody, I'm back with part 3 of my video. I wanted to sort of break down the Mono Black deck that I've decided to play, come up with a couple of the important decisions that I came up with for the deck building. It's pretty straightforward. This is a deck that's been around for a while, but I do think there are some pretty important decisions that I decided to make in order to make this deck the best possible situation that it can be in. So, to start off, there are 24 lands, so 4 Castle, 4 Mutavault, 2 copies of Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, and then I think that's 14 Swamps when you're left with it. 24 lands in total. You're an aggressive deck, but you really want to hit your first 5 or 6, or 4 or 5, I guess, 4 or 5 land drops in order to play the games. The reason that I've decided to go with 2 Urborg specifically is because I do think your Urborg Mutavault hands are pretty important. You're playing Grasp of Darkness, Murderous Rider, Rankle, Kalitas, and I have a Hero's Downfall. So hitting black is actually pretty important, not to mention games where you want to go 1-drop into 1-drop, 1-drop. And Urborg just increases the opportunity for you to do that, as well as the fact that because I have Grasp of Darkness and Hero's Downfall, there are some games where I actually play Mutavault, play Urborg to give Fatal Push Revolt. I think the second Urborg is pretty low cost. It's a card that you want to see a pretty good percentage of the time, but it's also a card that you don't particularly need more than 2 of. I think it might be too cute to play the second Urborg, but who cares? So on to the creatures. The Bloodsoaked Champion and the Knight of the Ebon Legion, I think, are pretty much standard at this point. The Scrap Heap Scrounger as well, and then the 4 Murderous Rider is sort of your removal suite. That stuff's pretty straightforward, as well as the Thoughtseize, Fatal Push. Excuse me. The Thoughtseize and the Fatal Push also make most deck lists. Where people start to diverge is the number of Grasp of Darknesses and the 4-drops that they play. I think that Grasp of Darkness is very good specifically against the aggressive green decks. So like Steel Leaf Champion, Sirach, the Hunt Caller. And it's also very good against the big red decks. Things that Grasp of Darkness kills that other cards don't kill. Like Cast Down, for example. Sirach does not kill Torbrand. It does not kill Karizev. So I think Grasp of Darkness, there's a lot of equity there. It also opposing Kalitases, opposing Rankles. Excuse me. I also think that Grasp of Darkness helping you trade in combat with larger creatures, things like Rotting Regisaur. You can kill with Cast Down, but you can also, I mean, if you're making a Rotting Regisaur a 3/2, you're trading with it in any creature in your deck. So I do think that like some of those cards you're still just killing anyway. I think Lovestruck Beast is the one card that you kind of lose out on when you're not playing Cast Down. But again, they play Lovestruck Beast and you just grasp it. They're 2/1. You're still sort of trading, or you're just killing it if you have a creature that has 2 or more toughness. So I like Grasp. I think Grasp is good. I think it's useful at just like killing basically everything, and it's just being a mid-range removal spell. I am kind of wary of the fact that there are some things that Grasp doesn't kill. There are some things that I want to be able to kill. One other like big thing is Soul Flare. Sometimes they'll give Soul Flare indestructible, but they won't be able to give it hexproof. And I think that matters a good bit because Grasp can kill it there. I am wary that there are some things that Grasp doesn't kill. So I added an additional Hero's Downfall to my deck. Being able to kill the uptick in Planeswalkers, I think, is particularly useful, as well as just being able to kill larger creatures or more threatening creatures. I think Downfall adds a lot of utility. If I could play 5 Murderous Riders, I would. But Hero's Downfall is just sort of the concession that I've made to that. I think that there was a time where I would consider playing 2 Kalitas, but I think you lose a lot of equity in playing the second Kalitas against a lot of decks where it's just dead. Something like Lotus Field, for example. Not to say that Hero's Downfall is an all-star in that matchup, but you do need to clear out the random Arboreal Grazer. And sometimes you get to hit a Jace or like a Thassa's Devoted or something like that. or even an Ugin after they use it. So there is some value there, I think. And Downfall's also quite good against the ramp decks. It's really hard for them to do stuff. Going to the larger threats, I do think Rankle is just very good. Apart from being able to edict a card like Soul Flare, apart from being able to fly over large blockades, Rankle's just really good at stopping people from doing things, particularly against the Verdict decks. Having a haste threat that gets to make them discard a card, especially in game ones when you have dead cards like Fatal Push and Grasp of Darkness. It's just really useful to have that card in your deck. It's also just like really good at getting evasive. One thing that I'm really trying to do with this deck is I'm trying to get evasive with the Harvesters, but also Rankle can fly over something like a Feedslayer Paladin or a Monastery Mentor. And if they don't have a spell, they can, you can sack Monastery Mentor. It's another way to kill Feedslayer Paladin. I do think that this deck is pretty resilient to the kinds of counterplay that people are playing. Aethersphere Harvester as well, very good against Supreme Verdict, very good against the red decks. Just like being able to get tempo against something like a Torbrand or a Glorybringer is useful. Having 5 toughness is very useful. So it beats opposing grasps. It blocks something like Rekindling Phoenix, Arclight Phoenix. It's able to stop those cards. It's able to fly over and attack something like Chandra without being able to get killed on the backswing. It doesn't get killed by something like Lava Coil that other decks might play. And it's just generally like pretty good at keeping you from dying against the like very aggressive decks. It's just a very good blocker. It's a way to mitigate your early Thought Seizes and some of your early castle activations. I think overall it's just a very good, very versatile card that keeps you aggressive without actually putting you in any particular danger. The last sort of deviation is the 2 remaining slots, the Gutter Bones in the main deck. I think Gutter Bones, you want to be aggressive in your Thoughtseize deck. It's particularly a reason why you get to play something like Drill Bit. So I do think that playing the recursive 2/1s is basically the extra card advantage that you're getting, and being able to double spell is just like very useful. But I do think there's some diminishing returns playing like 3 or 4 copies of that card. I opted to play an extra removal spell instead. So moving on to the sideboard, you'll notice that there are a lot of hate cards. So I have Leyline of the Void and Damping Sphere. This is in large part to the Lotus Veil Underworld Breach deck. I just want to be able to have hate for that deck. I don't think that cards like Duress do quite enough, and so I want to be able to just bring in all of these cards in the matchups where my removal spells are dead. It's particularly useful, Leyline of the Void, to have something against like a deck like Soul Flare, and then it has some incidental value against something like Arclight Phoenix, but it also absolutely hoses the Underworld Breach deck that's, cutting tons and tons of slots so that they can just mill over their whole deck. And if there's a Leyline in play, then they can't actually do that. Over here, you have 5 discard spells. I think the extra 5 discard spells are really useful against control decks, are very useful against combo decks. And then the drill bits come in against a ramp deck, for example, where you do still want to keep in your removal, but you also want to be able to kill creatures. I think it's a nice flex fit that's able to hit some Eldrazi, hit cards like Ugin. It's very aggressive, and I like that. Moving forward, I could see myself abandoning something like Damping Sphere for something like Lost Legacy, and then maybe trimming down on one of these removal spells if I really want to hose the combo decks. But then I've got 5 cards left. Kalitas and Aethersphere Harvester for my aggressive decks, and then Noxious Grasp comes in against the control decks, which is very useful, but it's also very good against mono green. One sort of shortcoming is if I'm playing against something like mono blue or like mono red, I'm a little lacking. There's like a point removal spell that I might want, and maybe there's an argument for Hero's Downfall becoming something a little bit smaller because I have so many ways to answer Planeswalkers, which is something that I'm definitely considering. But I do think that overall there's a good in-out ratio. There's a lot of times where you want to cut like Kalitas and every non-downfall removal spell, and I have a lot of cards to come in there. And so I think that's particularly useful. But I also think your deck's low enough to the ground that you don't really have to manipulate your top end too much. There's also an argument for Hero's Downfall becoming something like a Spawn of Mayhem, but I really do think you don't want to get too top-heavy, and staying lower to the ground is more useful. So those are sort of the considerations, the things that I'm thinking about. when I'm building this deck. I think it's a very sleek, aggressive strategy. I think it's really good right now. It's sort of keeping people honest as they're trying new things. Of note, you are able to have a lot of ways to interact with a lot of different combos that people are trying out right now. Thoughtseize is just like one of the better cards in the format, and so this is the Mono Black deck that I am thinking about playing in PTQs at at New Jersey next weekend. I'm not sure if I'll end up on it. Somebody might just break it rather than me just playing these fair cards, but I wanted to let you all know sort of what I'm working with, why I decided to play these specific cards. And if I have an updated list, I'll definitely post it on my Twitter before the tournament. Thanks. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.